Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner, operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events, and I want to welcome you to our program today. Now, if you've been following our program for the last 2 years, you'll realize that what we do on our show is we take an individual film and we kind of have a conversation about it. We kind of critique and analyze it sometimes, or sometimes we just have a lot of fun talking about the movie. That being said, sometimes we have spoilers that we love to say. So if you're listening to our program and you want to listen to something that's a spoiler free, go listen to someone else's program. That's not what we do here. We kind of delve deep into the film, whether it's the good, the bad, or the extremely ugly type of film. There is not a film out there that we do not touch, which is why we love what we do here. Now, that being said, before I get to the title of our film today for our program, I'd like to bring in our guest. And her name is Teresa Sanson. I want to thank you so much for joining us on the show, Teresa.
Thanks so much for having me, Kevin. You and I have known each other quite a long time, and I'm happy to be able to give you my 2 cents on some of these horror films. And also, you can also refer to me as TJ. That is kind of my professional name, and that, it doesn't matter. I mean, T stands for Teresa, so you are correct. But in terms of our industry-related affairs, refer to me, please, as TJ. I appreciate that.
Will do. That being said, what film we are going to be discussing today is a found footage film that's called The Pyramid. Now, I know a lot of you out there may have never seen the film, much less never heard of the film. And as I've been talking to you over the course of the last year, a lot of these movies that are found footage films are films that are going to be part of a project we are doing for next year, which is why we've been doing so many of them. So I'm very happy to be discussing this and to be discussing it with TJ. So first of all, I would like to know kind of what was your first impressions of the movie, and how did you come about seeing the movie, first of all?
Well, I saw it online. I think I saw it on YouTube, and it was a freebie. I didn't have, because my streaming service didn't provide it. So I found the link online through YouTube and just, I just watched it from there. It's a decent rendition of it. I mean, it's a decent copy. It doesn't look real fuzzy or like somebody sat there with their phone and taped it off the TV. It looks nice looking. So truthfully, my impression was that it doesn't come off as a found footage film, at least not in my definition of found footage. Yes, there was a camera person following this crew as they were going deep into this pyramid, but that in and of itself doesn't, to me, define it as found footage. Found footage is, to use Blair Witch Project as an example, is very choppy bits and pieces that weave a story together, and you kind of have to fill in the blanks a little bit. Mm-hmm. And obviously the found footage is supposed to be there after everyone else has either vanished or died, which was not the case with this movie, Pyramid. So yeah, I didn't really regard this as a found footage. It was just a neat, creepy monster movie, because there is a monster in it. And you said spoilers, right? Are okay? Yeah, there's this monster is supposed to be a rendition of the god Horus, which, in Egyptian mythology is up there. I mean, there's the trilogy of different. There's Bastet, and there's Horus, and there's one other, and I can't recall offhand.
Anubis?
I believe so, yes. So this creature had a dog face, and it was, but you don't really even see that till closer to the end. And there's, final girl. There's no final anything in the found horror footage. The found horror is itself the final survivor, so there was final girl in this, the blonde girl who was leading everybody down there. Yes, it's bloody. Yes, there's some deaths. Yes, they get trapped in a pyramid. Duh. And all the drama's underplaying while the camera guy is kind of filming. So it's half on camera and then half just regular, if that makes sense. Is how I perceive it. But yeah, not horrible. If you dig that sort of thing, give it a shot. I wouldn't call it anything to write home about, not because I'm a horror movie snob. There's certain things that are like just way up here, the top tier, and then there's this whole chunk down here of middle tier movies, and then down here, blech.
So I originally saw this movie at the theater when it was originally released. I was a huge fan. I still am a huge fan of found footage films, but I'm also a huge fan of Alexander Aja, who produced this and helped with the story elements of it. So that was one of the drawing reasons why I originally saw it at the theater. I did not like it because for everyone knowing out there, found footage films in general are exactly what TJ kind of says, or at least that was the original aesthetic of it, but it is not what the aesthetics of are nowadays, because the found footage is just kind of the all-encompassing genre that we give it when someone's carrying around the camera the entire film and filming everything that happens. Chronicle is another good one that says the last person doesn't die, but the entire film is done by found footage. The reason why this film is odd is because it breaks those aesthetics very early on. Most of it is by camera op, but if you remember the beginning sequence when the documentary crew is going to Egypt, there are actual shots that are not shot by the documentary crew, and they are actually the filmmaker shooting shots, as well as shots at the very end of the movie. There is the filmmaker who is inserting shots within the shots that are actually being shot by the camera person.
Right.
I expected that because Alexander Aja is not someone who likes to conform to any types of rules. If you have seen his movie High Tension, you will know that he loves to break rules and screw with the audience. So I'm not surprised that happened in this film at all, but it is something that takes you out of the film, in my opinion. That is unfortunate because that's one of the worst things I hate, because it took me a long time to get over that same aspect of High Tension at the very end when he breaks every rule that he established beforehand. And if you have listened to our show, we have talked extensively about High Tension in the previous episode, so please make sure to check out that episode as well.
I'll have to. High Tension, is that on any streaming service, any network?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I would have to look it up myself. That one, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not. I would, might be on something like Shudder or one of the other horror streaming platforms, but I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Yeah, this is one that you have to be a fan of kind of Egyptology type movies to really follow, not just follow, but be entertained at some of the stuff that happens in the film. And then two, you have to be entertained by the fact that by the time the Egyptian god shows up, that you are good with the less than stellar CGI for him.
Yeah.
This is not Cloverfield, which has extremely effective CGI mixed in with the found footage. This is like, even at the time this was made, which was long after Cloverfield, this movie has CGI that is questionable.
I would say it's student grade CGI, really. Granted, the monster was creepy, but it was not frightening to me. And I was not expecting a monster movie from found footage, because the whole premise around found footage is this mystery of the unknown, what you don't see. Okay, it's what you don't see is what's creepier than what you do see. And I harken back to Blair Witch, because they're, first of all, they're sleeping. Then there's noise out that side, and then they run, and then they're running, and then all of a sudden cut, and it's next morning, and you don't see what happened between the time they were out in the middle of the woods and then they got back to the tent. And I sat there and I watched that film like 3 times in a row just to pick up the details, because you get so caught up into it that you ignore some of the little, then you start asking the questions, but that's what makes that found footage, that particular one. And some people hate it. I mean, they thought it was stupid or whatever, and that's fine too. But as far as the craft of it, it's invention. Where, like I said, the things that you don't see are creepier. Your imagination takes over a little bit. So And I didn't get that with Pyramid. I mean, the story unfolded just like a regular standard movie, and then you just had things like the characters doing things, interacting, talking, and they were not on the camera portion. And then it's almost like when they start kind of getting argumentative and they start fighting a little bit, then you see the camera guy, and then the girl's like, take the camera off me, turn it off, blah blah blah. And then I think at some point it's that camera guy that gets the axe too. At one point, doesn't he?
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
doesn't he meet his fatal end? So yeah.
Yeah, but the camera
Um,
switches from him to Nora at that point. Nora,
right.
who's the main actress that you were trying, or the character that you were trying to remember, it shows up at the very end, who succumbs to uh, the 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 infection from the opening of the pyramid that they were waiting to be. So at the very beginning, when the first person, when they open the tomb, is exposed to that disease that comes out, she's eventually succumbs to that same disease at the very end, which you don't see because you just see her eyes and everything, and you see her eyes, she's infected with that before the young boy gets killed by the Egyptian god at the end. So, but
Right.
but I mean, and that's where it cuts, which is a staple of most or found footage films. But it is rare for them to use a monster because it's so hard to be effective. I think the two films that I bring to mind that have effective monsters, or three, would be Cloverfield, Troll Hunter, and Frankenstein's Army, which uses CGI extremely well, but not so much the Pyramid.
No, no. I mean, like I said, I mean, it was an okay horror flick. I mean, nothing, like I said, nothing to write, nothing I'm probably going to watch again with the idea of, ooh, I want to see this again and get wrapped up in their story again. I mean, one and done for me on this one. Unlike some of my favorites that I can watch again and again and again. But that, um, I wanted to say, you were talking about Egyptologist films. Like, now, I guess you're familiar with Stargate. Not really a horror movie, but it's science fiction.
The movie, yes. The show, no. I never got around to
Well,
watching the show. I've just seen the movie.
I mean the movie. I mean the movie, the one with Kurt
Kurt
Russell
Russell.
and James Spader. And the whole idea of these the characters that they were drawn in the hieroglyphics may well have been aliens. Their faces and shaped that turn it.
Yeah,
The god Ra. It's Ra, the sun god.
yeah,
The concept of him like having been an alien that came to Earth at one time. And which was kind of neat. Um, okay, I love the Egypt. I love mythology. It's just so creepy, and you never know about the origins of some of these stories.
no, and that
Really, what really happened?
and that's one of that's one of the marketing aspects for this film. And during this time period when all these found footage films were being released, they were all trying to come up with a new concept that hadn't been done before. You couldn't just keep going back to the woods and hoping that there was a witch in there for a found footage film. Everyone kept doing different things. You had the demonic one, which is the devil inside. Then, of course, you had Chronicle, which is what if these kids found superpowers, and then you have Troll Hunter, which is trolls that still are alive, and everyone was coming up with a concept
I gotta mention Paranormal Activity.
for
Did you never see
yeah, yeah,
found footage?
yeah, yeah,
And there's like six of those movies. It's like after number three, it kind of got old. So then they went ahead and made three more, and it involves the same characters. But it's like the first, it's like it goes backwards,
yeah,
because the girl that got possessed by whatever and rushes toward the camera, towards that's the one that went missing, and the husband and baby. But then Paranormal Activity 2 kind of went a prequel. It backtracked, and it kind of keeps going, and that it's like it keeps going further and further back, showing how they were, supposedly haunted as children.
yeah,
And the found footage is the nanny cam type of thing. It's the house camera, the security camera, which also is kind of a neat concept.
yeah.
'Cause instead of a camera person going around, it's the camera from the house that's put around, and you're seeing the things going on around in the house.
Yeah, they did that with those films. They did a different aesthetic for each one of the subsequent sequels, except for I think the marked ones. I don't think the marked ones did anything other than that being a spin-off, or the Japanese version, which is also just a spin-off. So
Okay.
I think, yeah, because I think it's the fourth one used like the computer screens to aesthetic, and then the second one used the security cameras, and then one of them uses the really old original VHS type camera.
Right.
So they all tried to use something different as their marketing ploy, kind of like this one did when it was just it's in Egypt. You go into a tomb. Everybody wants to go into an Egyptian tomb. It's like
I don't. I'm claustrophobic. I don't want to go down in there in them tunnels. I mean, I could just see my worst fear is just getting trapped down there, and God knows the way the way shit happens to me, I probably would. I mean,
well, that's one
so
of the great things about this film is it kind of goes on that whole like kind of aesthetic. You have the older seasoned father figure, the Nora, and then of course you have the film crew that's going down there because it's news. They're opening up a whole new tomb. It's news. And it's all going on while there's a conflict in Egypt at the time, just right outside their door. And so, they eventually go into the tomb because they just can't not do it. And then all kinds of chaos ensues because it's not what they expected. And they're even using new technology in there. So, there's a lot of things going on at the same time.
yeah, there was in as far as like those things, but I keep getting what was I going to say, and I forgot what I was going to say. It has an escape room quality to it because they're going from kind of one chamber to another, and they're following along, and then they're trying to kind of get out of there. So like that whole escape room idea, isn't there
Yeah.
a movie called Escape Room? I think there probably is. Okay,
yeah, there's several
I haven't
movies called
seen it,
Escape Room.
but I've actually been in one of those escape room type situations, and thank goodness it's fake because I'd be screaming. I don't like being trapped. One of my worst fears. So I had to kind of deal with a little bit of anxiety watching that film.
This one has, if you've ever seen the movie As Above, So Below, it kind of follows that kind of idea where where the group of characters are going to different rooms and encountering different obstacles, kind of like you said, an escape room, and that makes it much more interesting instead of just being kind of like going into the woods, or like The Devil Inside, which we've also talked about before on the show. The Devil Inside just is kind of like the characters going from one kind of exorcism to the next. This one kind of ups the ante because they have a limited amount of time in each room before they either get killed, or someone gets killed, or like the one scene where the sand starts coming in and
no, that's like I can't watch that stuff.
Yeah, it's a ticking
timer. Through it.
It's a ticking
Being buried alive. That's another one. Being buried alive. That just freaks the hell out of me. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, and
don't you get any ideas now?
Well, what it does in the movie is it keeps the audience in a very suspenseful mood, and it doesn't. This film never lets up. Once it starts, you're on this ticking time clock to get out of the pyramid, or the characters are, and you're just stuck with them. And for the most part, you don't actually see the Egyptian god doesn't show up for a good bit because they're too busy trying to play up the suspense of the so-called cats or cat-like creatures who have been eating off each other.
What the heck is with those cats? Just little. That is the worst aspect of that movie to me. They were so unrealistic in every aspect. I could deal with Horus because he's kind of a mythological figure anyway, and because he's always depicted in those, statues or in those Egyptian type drawings, real flat. He could be any freaking thing, really. But those cats, no, sorry. They need to do better. They need to do better with cats.
the so-called hairless cats that have been eating off each other and mating with each other for God knows how long. Yeah. So they're now ferocious little beasts in the film,
No,
but they
didn't work for
have a
me.
purpose. That at the very end, they instead of attacking Nora, they attack the Egyptian god and allows her to escape the pyramid. For as long as she can.
And all of a sudden these funky mutant cats come to her rescue. That's just so weird to me how it ended up like that. Why did they attack Horus? I can't remember.
There's not. They don't give a reason. They don't give a reason. They
just go for the big,
they just go
ugly dog-faced creature instead of the woman. Okay.
Yeah, there's not in my view a reason, and I always thought that was strange when I originally saw the film. I was like, that's an interesting choice to do, but okay, because I always thought that the cats would have gone after him a long time ago if they just hated him. They've been stuck in that pyramid for so damn long.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And managing to exist down there.
Yeah.
And feeding off each other, I guess. I don't know. Whatever.
Especially considering that the tomb itself was designed to house him and not anything else or anyone else. So you would think that if he didn't really like cats, he probably would have killed them all a long time ago. But that's part of the logic issue, the logic issues you might have with the film if you think about it too much. If you've watched a lot of films produced by Alexandre Aja, like P2 or Piranha 3D or Mirrors or this one or Crawl or the multitude of different films, you can't always think about some of the logic aspects. They're kind of like these roller coaster rides. If you've seen Crawl, it's a roller coaster ride where these two people are trapped in a building with a freaking giant crocodile.
That really tests the boundaries of suspension of disbelief. You really have to suspend a lot. Well,
if you watch P2, it's literally almost a two-person only film about being trapped in a parking deck for most of the entire movie. They're high concepts. Lot of stuff.
Help me out. This guy's name is what? Something Aja?
Aja. He's French, I believe. I'm hoping I'm getting that. Alexandre Aja. Yes.
Okay, I'll look that person up. I really often get into like stuff that's really different. Not just creepy, bump in the night, monster in the house, unseen figure, kind of creepy in the background of the girl on the phone or watching TV, and those little jump scares that they're so blasé. I mean, unless you can incorporate those little elements into a really good story. And sometimes you can. Most of the times it's the story that's kind of So we're just going to throw in all these little elements to make you jump and get your heart rate up and, kind of keep you going, oh, God. But I always want to see is what I would like to see. You're setting everything up for some kind of weird thing to happen, and it doesn't. And nothing happens. It's just business as usual. It's kind of a letdown, but at the same time, it's like, I was not expecting that.
So what did you think about this one? Was this a letdown, or they had elements that you just weren't expecting?
For the pyramid?
Yeah.
Kind of run of the mill, and in my opinion, nothing spectacular. Like I said, if I want to watch it again and go back and maybe pick through it a little in the details, but I'm such a horror movie buff that I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of all kinds. And when it really stands out to me is something like, oh, I need to check that out again. Something I want to see if I'm connecting the dots right. I don't feel like I would need to in this particular film. But I want to check out that guy's other work. Is it a guy or a woman?
Guy.
Guy?
Yeah.
P2, it sounds interesting. Parking deck. Now that's got some creep elements to it because that can actually really happen.
Yeah, it stars
that can actually really happen. I mean, parking decks exist. They're all over the place. They're in, different cities and stuff. So that's more probable, I guess I'm trying to say, than being stuck in a pyramid, with a anamorphic Horus and these cat things. I'm sorry.
Then that's
Go
fine.
ahead.
That's fine because P2, which was also just produced by Alexander Aja, he came up with a story because he's got high concept mind, like Larry Cohen. For those of you we've talked on the show about Larry Cohen many times because he wrote the Maniac Cop film, so he's got high concepts. So Alexander Aja has a lot of high concepts, of which this one is a high concept, the pyramid. P2 is another one. Wes Bentley and Rachel Nichols. I love Rachel Nichols. They're just great together. Wes Bentley, most of you might know Wes Bentley from Yellowstone now. He's a fixture on Yellowstone, but before Yellowstone.
He was also in American Beauty. He was also in American Horror Story Hotel.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know who Wes Bentley is.
Yeah, he's done a lot of stuff. He P2 is on the crazier side for him, although he has done some other questionable roles in his career because he's a very capable actor. Anyone who followed him from originally American Beauty, which I think probably was his first big movie, and then he moved on from there, from doing everything from freaking I want to say the Hunger Games movies, Jesus, to everything else that he's done since then, especially Yellowstone. But yes, and Rachel Nichols, who has been doing the same thing. Hopefully, she'll get another great show. She's been in everything from one of the G.I. Joe movies to having her own show, sci-fi show, which I can't think of the name of it right now. But getting back to Aja and the director, who was the director of the Pyramid? I can't even think of it now. And don't get me wrong, guys. I kind of think about this sometimes, and there's so many people in my head I sometimes forget. Gregory Lavasseur, who has worked with Alexander Aja on several other projects, did this one. And the thing is, this is one, and this was probably definitely a much bigger budget than P2 was, and probably had a much bigger marketing campaign than the movie that just took place in a parking deck. But it didn't do well. I don't remember a single. The critics were not kind to the movie, and it did not do well at the box office.
About Pyramid?
Yeah, the Pyramid.
You mean the Pyramid?
Yeah, it did not do well. And I think there just are a lot of people out there. I think the ideal for like a pyramid film, Egypt, doesn't really work unless it's The Mummy. In this day and age, it's unfortunate. They were trying something new, trying something different. It didn't work, and this is not that people talk about. Like, this is one of the reasons why it's on our program, is because it's one of those films that kind of came and went and they completely disappeared.
Yeah, like I said, I was paying particularly close attention to it. It's definitely not one of those. I was doing it more because, to prepare myself for the podcast, but it's not something that, just glancing at it, if I saw it on Netflix or Hulu or any of the streaming and they give you the little synopsis and the actors' names, and looking at it, I probably would just, it's like swipe left. You know what I mean? Like you're here on Tumblr. It's not something that I would grab right away, because I would probably, unless it was one of those bits, well, I really just want to watch something. This looks okay, click. But I want to mention something about found footage, and you mentioned there was a Japanese version of something. It is rare that the Asian filmmakers and entertainment production companies borrow from an American, a Western tale. It seems to be the trend was going that Americans were borrowing from the Asian films for a long time there. I think starting with The Ring back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then Ju-On, which is The Grudge. They did 1 and 2, and there was The Ring 1 and 2. There's been several others. Shutter, which is about a camera, a guy that keeps seeing a ghostly image in his, photography. The Eye is another one. There's a bunch of I'm a big fan of the tartan Asian horror. I love that stuff. But one film I would recommend if you've never seen it, and this was never made by an American or a Western filmmaker, probably just because it's kind of sick. It's called Marabito, and it is a found footage type of movie. It's about a middle-aged man, a filmmaker, a camera guy who's like a journalistic camera guy who kind of goes around the city, and just what happens is he works for a news channel station, and he literally recorded a suicide on a subway. Guy stabs himself in the forehead with a knife on a subway. And he's cut it, and his room, he's kind of weird. He's got all these not cameras, TV screens in his room with video, and he just watches all these different stuff. And I'm like, okay, dude, this is a little creepy. He comes to believe that there are these creatures that live down in the subway, and he tries to capture them with his camera. It's a very weird film, and it would be very, very difficult for a Western filmmaker to translate the message and the concept into a film that with American or European actors and actresses, because it gets kind of creepy and weird and voyeuristic. This guy starts stalking young teenage girls. Okay, it gets weird. But it does have a found footage. It's a guy with a camera. I mean, they do disappear. Him and this girl. They disappear into this cave. And so in terms of it being found footage, it's hard to really tell if the idea is to take that found footage and weave it all together to tell the story. I mean, it can, but then there's enough going on, if I'm making sense, outside of that, what he captures on camera, the real world type of the movie, if it were, not the stuff that he's just capturing. And it's called Marabito, Marebito.
Yeah, directed by Takashi Shimizu. Jesus.
That's it. Yes.
He actually is one of my favorite directors. Who's most of his films are freaking weird and odd and unusual, and I don't believe any of them have ever been remade by a Western audience just yet.
No, it's because the nature is so dark and it's so disturbing. I mean, it's not for the faint-hearted. His stuff. It involves incest, pedophilia. Yeah. Okay, I'll leave it there.
Nothing that the Pyramid possesses, but that does not mean that movie will not come out on as one of the titles that we actually raise here on our show, our program. We actually have not done any of his films yet. You're the first person to actually mention any of his films, so we might have to tackle some of those together for the future.
I'm down.
So
I'm down.
But getting back to our roundabout way of getting back to the Pyramid, and everyone who listens to the show, as you know, we do a lot of tangents on our show, getting back and off subject, but we have always stayed on subject in regards to the found footage aesthetic, which is what we want to do there. A whole point of us doing these films is to allow you, the audience, to experience and hear about other different found footage films, because we are generally lovers of that subgenre, which is kind of looked down upon. And by having these conversations, we can actually shed light on other types of films out there that you might be interested in, whether you like found footage films or not. So with that, I'm trying to think of any other thing I would like to talk about in regards to the Pyramid. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up on the film itself, TJ?
I can't think of anything. No, I've said pretty much everything that, that I was, my thought processes through it all, and, thinking about it afterwards. And again, if it's something that you're just curious about, check it out. It's on YouTube. It's free, at least for now. I mean, I don't know, how these things kind of come and go. So if you're interested in checking it out, just check it out. And, the beauty of TV is I got that remote control in your hand. You don't like it, switch the channel.
I will say that with the film, I did like the kind of contrast between the old style with of Egyptology and archaeology. Archaeology in specific, in regards to the main character Holden, played by Dennis O'Hara. I had to mention him because he was actually one of the main characters in a lot of seasons of American Horror Story, which you've mentioned. He's probably the most well-known actor on the cast in this one, Dennis O'Hara. Even when he did this, I believe I knew him from American Horror Story. But and it's always good to point him out because he seems to be chewing scenery in this film. But it's a great ideal to kind of contrast and compare his old school aesthetic with that of his daughter, who is using new technology such as x-raying the cave before actually going into it, using the robot to go in and see stuff before they venture out in there, because they know of the dangers in regards to the bad air, which is what infects the first person that goes in and eventually overcomes Nora. I didn't like that aspect, but they lose it about halfway through the film, and they don't ever go back to that. There's a lot of setup with that, but they kind of lose it because it becomes a monster movie at that point. And some of the more interesting themes that they kind of start off with, they kind of lose track of. I mean,
that's kind of what I was thinking too. If I must say, you mentioned the little robot that went in there. I just completely, left. I forgot about it because they forgot about it. They didn't stick with that. And it was the guy that owned it or operated it. Almost like he treated it like his little pet or something. It was so funny that, but they would throw him in there and then he gets demolished. Spoiler, sorry.
No, he's the first one to die.
Yeah, the little robot thing, drone or whatever he is, and they could have done so much more with that.
Yeah, but they drop it, and then it comes up at the very end when they send that SOS video that doesn't really go anywhere, but they send it out in the case someone might pass by it and see it. I will say that for some of the gore fans out there are some interesting gore moments in the film to be had. But that's in the second half of the film more so than the first half. First half spends a lot of time with setup, which is not uncommon for found footage films. There's a lot of setup for most found footage films before actually getting on to what's the important part. But this is got some gory moments in there, some heart ripping out and other things getting ripped out. So if you're a gore fan, that might appease you a little bit. But I'm still, after having watched it for the podcast and and for the book itself, I'm still kind of leery upon the movie because of the fact that I'm still not convinced on the CGI that was used, and the fact that I do not like the fact that the style breaks the found footage aesthetics. I would have been more happy if it had always been cameras, whether it was the personal cameras used by the people who entered the cave and or the filmmaker, Fitzy, then to just have these shots that were omniscient. Like they're just out there just being that. I think that takes away a lot for me. Especially as being a found footage fan, I am like you. I kind of like the fact that stuff like Cloverfield or Blair Witch Project never break that unsaid wall as a found footage film. And so when I'm watching one of those, that's what I'm expecting, and that's what I want. And when they break that, it kind of ruins it for me. Which is why I haven't gone back to rewatch this film a whole lot. I own the movie, but because I'm a huge Alexandra Aja fan, so it's in my collection. But it's not a movie I go back to rewatch. So with that, I want to thank you, TJ, for joining us on Conversations in Horror. From everyone here, at Something Wicked Entertainment. We hope that you've been entertained by us discussing the movie The Pyramid, because, you know, sometimes listening to us talk is more entertaining than watching the actual movie.
Yeah, I would like to. Yeah, okay. I'll leave that one there. I want to thank you, Kevin, for having me. This was fun. I look forward to doing this again with you. Just let me know.
All right, will do. From all of us here at Something Wicked Entertainment and Conversation in Horror, we hope you've enjoyed this show. Please make sure to check out some of our previous episodes. We've done a lot of great movies over the course of the last 2 years, having done over 175 episodes. So we hope you will stick with us. So make sure to like, follow, share, subscribe. Do that thing you do with your favorite podcast app or your favorite podcast on your favorite podcast app, Spotify or YouTube. Also, do not forget to check out our brand new podcast, which is Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors. That is also free and accessible on podcast apps. And don't forget our other podcast, which is only on our Patreon page, and it's called Conversations in 4Color, and it delves deep into comic books, manga, and graphic novels. From all of us here, please have a great day, and remember, stay out of those pyramids. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.